The conference room door clicked shut 6 inches from my face. Through the frosted glass, I could see the silhouettes of 15 people settling into their seats. My father at the head of the table, Uncle James to his right, my cousin Derek presenting something on the screen. The quarterly strategy meeting for Morrison & Associates, the commercial real estate firm my grandfather had founded 42 years ago. I'd been attending these meetings for 7 years, ever since I'd graduated from business school. Until today. Sarah. My father's assistant, Michelle, touched my arm gently. I'm sorry. He said family only this time. He didn't give me much warning. I nodded, my portfolio bag still in my hand, the quarterly reports I'd spent the weekend reviewing still tucked inside. Did he say why? Michelle glanced at the closed door, lowering her voice. Your cousin Derek is presenting his new development proposal. Something about wanting to keep it confidential until the deal is finalized. Your dad thought it was better to limit the meeting to blood relatives only. I see. I adjusted my grip on the bag. And who's in there besides family? Well, there's your dad, Uncle James, Derek, your Aunt Patricia. Michelle paused, looking uncomfortable. Also Richard Chin from Westfield Capital, Susan Park from the investment committee, and about 8 other external advisors and consultants. But family only, I said flatly. That's what he said. Michelle looked miserable. Sarah, for what it's worth, I think this is ridiculous. You've contributed more to these meetings than half the people in that room. I smiled, the expression not quite reaching my eyes. It's fine, Michelle. If they want family only, that's their choice. I walked down the corridor, my heels echoing on the polished marble floors of the building my grandfather had designed. Morrison & Associates occupied the top 3 floors of the downtown tower. Visible space for a visible company. What wasn't visible was the ownership structure that kept the whole thing running. In the elevator, I pulled out my phone and opened an encrypted app that connected directly to my investment firm, Hartwell Strategic Capital. The firm my college roommate and I had started 12 years ago, back when we were 2 ambitious 22-year-olds with more confidence than capital. The firm that now managed $2.3 billion in assets. The firm that, through a carefully structured series of holding companies and investment vehicles, owned 51% of Morrison & Associates. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. I answered as the elevator descended. Hi, Jennifer. Sarah, I saw the board meeting alert for Morrison & Associates, my business partner said, her voice crisp and professional. I thought you were attending today? Change of plans. Dad decided to make it family only. There was a pause. Family only? You're his daughter. Apparently not the right kind of family for this particular meeting. I stepped out of the elevator and headed toward the parking garage. Derek's presenting his new development proposal and they wanted to keep it confidential. The Riverside project? Jennifer's tone sharpened. Sarah, we reviewed that proposal last month. The numbers were questionable at best. If Derek's pushing that through without proper oversight, then that's a decision the family is making, I said, reaching my car. The family that apparently doesn't include me. Another pause, longer this time. When Jennifer spoke again, her voice was careful. Sarah, you know what I'm going to ask. I sat in the driver's seat, not starting the engine. Through the parking garage's concrete pillars, I could see the city stretching out in the afternoon sun. Somewhere up there, in that conference room, my family was making decisions about a company they thought they controlled. Not yet, I said quietly. Let me think about it. You've been thinking about it for 3 years. Ever since your dad started introducing you at company events as, my daughter who works in finance, instead of acknowledging what you actually do. He doesn't know what I actually do, Jen. Nobody in that family does. Exactly my point. You own the majority stake in their company, Sarah. You're not some outside investor they can dismiss. You're the reason Morrison & Associates survived the 2022 real estate crash. You're the reason they could expand into 3 new markets. You're the reason their stock price tripled. And they don't even know it. I leaned my head back against the seat. Grandfather knew. Grandfather has been dead for 8 years. He knew before he died. I told him about the investment structure the year before he passed. He understood why I wanted to keep it private. And what did he say? I smiled at the memory. He said, let them underestimate you, Sarah. The best position in any negotiation is the one your opponent doesn't know you're in. Then he laughed and told me I reminded him of his mother. Well, your great-grandmother isn't here to give you advice and neither is your grandfather. But I am, and I'm telling you that this has gone on long enough. They just excluded you from a major strategic meeting. They're about to approve a development project that our analysts flagged as high risk. And they're doing it without any input from their majority shareholder. I watched an employee from one of the other companies in the building walk past, briefcase in hand, probably heading home for the day. Normal business. Normal life. Nothing like the decision I was weighing. If I reveal the ownership structure, I said slowly, it changes everything. Dad will feel betrayed. Uncle James will be furious. Derek will never forgive me. And if you don't reveal it? Derek pushes through a bad project, the company takes losses, and you watch your investment deteriorate because you were too nice to assert your legal rights as majority shareholder. You're not wrong. I'm never wrong. That's why you made me your business partner. Jennifer's tone softened slightly. Sarah, I know this is family. I know it's complicated. But Hartwell Strategic has fiduciary duties to our investors. We can't let a company we control make poor strategic decisions without intervention. That's not being mean. That's being responsible. A message flashed on my phone screen. An email from my father's office, sent to the general distribution list. Subject: Exciting developments, Riverside project approved. They just approved it, I said, opening the email. Derek's Riverside project. Full approval from the board. They're announcing it to the whole company. Jennifer's sigh was audible. How much capital are they committing? I scanned the email, my stomach sinking. $60 million. Leveraged construction loans. Projected completion in 18 months. And our analysts projected what? 30% chance of default. 35%. The market demographics don't support the commercial space Derek wants to build. The residential units are priced too high for the neighborhood. And the construction timeline is wildly optimistic given current labor shortages. $60 million on a project with a 35% failure rate. Sarah, you have to act. I closed my eyes, seeing my father's face the last time we'd had dinner together. He'd been so proud, talking about the company's growth, about Derek's innovative ideas, about the future of Morrison and Associates. He'd asked about my finance job, in that vague way he always did, not really listening to my answers because he didn't really understand what I did. Hey, I said. Do it. Do what specifically? Schedule an emergency shareholder meeting. Invoke our rights as majority stakeholder. Full disclosure of ownership structure. Jen, I want a complete audit of the Riverside project financials before we proceed. If it's as bad as our analysts think, I want documentation. That's going to take a few days to prepare properly. I have time. The Riverside groundbreaking isn't scheduled for 3 weeks. We can intervene before they break ground and lock in the construction contracts. I'll start the paperwork. Sarah, are you sure? I started my car, listening to the engine hum to life. No. But I'm doing it anyway. The next 72 hours were a blur of conference calls, legal reviews and strategic planning. Jennifer assembled a presentation that laid out Hartwell Strategic's ownership of Morrison and Associates in excruciating detail. Every shell company, every holding structure, every capital injection over the past 3 years. Our legal team prepared the shareholder rights documentation. Our analysts compiled a comprehensive risk assessment of Derek's Riverside project. On Thursday morning, Morrison and Associates executive team received formal notice of an emergency shareholder meeting scheduled for Monday at 10 a.m. The notice came from Hartwell Strategic Capital, exercising rights as the majority shareholder. My phone started ringing within an hour. First was Uncle James. Sarah, do you know anything about this? Some investment firm is calling an emergency meeting. They're claiming they own 51% of the company. I know, Uncle James. I'll be at the meeting. But who are these people? How did they get a majority stake? Your father and I control the Morrison family shares. We'll discuss it at the meeting, I said calmly. Monday at 10 a.m. He sputtered. This is highly irregular. Your father is extremely upset. We need to understand who we're dealing with. You will. Monday. Next was Derek, his voice tight with anger. Sarah, my dad just called me. Apparently we have to postpone announcing the Riverside project because some mysterious investor is making waves. Do you know anything about this? I'll be at the meeting, Derek. That's not what I asked. I asked if you know anything about who's disrupting our business. See you Monday, Derek. My father didn't call until Friday evening. I was at home reviewing the presentation one final time when his name appeared on my screen. Hi, Dad. Sarah. His voice was strained. I need you to be honest with me. Do you know who Hartwell Strategic Capital is? I set down my wine glass. Yes. And? It's my firm, Dad. Mine and my business partner Jennifer's. We started it 12 years ago. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, what do you mean, your firm? I mean, I'm the founder and managing partner of Hartwell Strategic Capital. We manage $2.3 billion in assets. And yes, we own 51% of Morrison & Associates. Another long silence. That's not possible. It's documented in the meeting materials you'll receive Monday morning. But I can walk you through it now if you want. Sarah, how could you own 51% of my company? The Morrison family holdings. We're 67% of the company 8 years ago, Dad. Right after grandfather died. But the company needed capital for expansion and the family couldn't provide it. So Morrison & Associates issued new shares and sought outside investment. Hartwell Strategic provided that capital through a series of structured investments over 3 years. Those investments gave us majority stake. You're saying you bought my company? I'm saying I invested in a company that needed capital. The company that grandfather built. I made sure it survived and thrived. Without telling me. His voice rose. Without telling anyone in the family? I told grandfather before he died. He knew about the investment structure. He approved. My father knew you were secretly buying the company and he said nothing? He didn't see it as secret, Dad. He saw it as strategic. And he understood why I structured it the way I did. Which was what? To humiliate your family? To take control behind our backs? I stood pacing my apartment. No, Dad. To protect the company while staying out of the family politics. You and Uncle James spent 3 years after grandfather's death fighting over every decision. Derek and Aunt Patricia were pushing for aggressive expansion without proper capital reserves. The company was hemorrhaging money and nobody could agree on a solution. So I provided one. By taking control. By investing capital when the family couldn't. By keeping the company solvent during the 2022 crash. By providing the financial backing for every successful expansion you've celebrated over the past 3 years. Morrison & Associates tripled its stock price, Dad. That wasn't luck. That was strategic investment and careful management. Management we didn't know about. Management you didn't want to know about. Every time I tried to offer financial advice, you told me I didn't understand the real estate business. Every time I questioned a decision, Derek told me to stay in my lane. So I got in my own lane. I just happened to own the road. Dad's breathing was heavy on the other end of the line. The meeting on Monday. What's going to happen? We're going to discuss the Riverside project. Our analysts have serious concerns about its viability. As majority shareholder, Hartwell Strategic has the right to review and approve major capital expenditures. You're going to block Derek's project. I'm going to present a risk assessment and ask for proper due diligence before committing $60 million to a development with a 35% projected failure rate. Derek has been working on this for 8 months. Derek has been working on his vision for 8 months. He hasn't been working on the financial fundamentals. The market analysis is flawed, the pricing is unrealistic, and the construction timeline is fantasy. If Morrison & Associates proceeds with this project as currently structured, it will likely fail. And I'm not going to watch grandfather's company lose $60 million because nobody wants to hurt Derek's feelings. So you wait until we exclude you from one meeting and then you drop this bomb? This is revenge, Sarah. No, Dad. This is consequence. You excluded me from a meeting where major strategic decisions were being made. You called it family only, while inviting external consultants and advisors. You made it clear that I wasn't part of the family that matters. So I'm participating in my other capacity, as the majority shareholder. That's not revenge. That's business. Sarah. I'll see you Monday, Dad. Bring your questions. Bring your concerns. But also bring your willingness to look at actual data instead of just family loyalty. I ended the call and sat back down, my hands shaking slightly. Jennifer had been right, there was no going back from this. Monday morning would change everything. The weekend was quiet. No more calls from family. No texts. Just silence. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. I dressed in my most conservative business suit, navy blue, professional, projecting exactly the image I wanted. Serious investor, not apologetic daughter. Jennifer met me in the lobby of the Morrison & Associates building. Ready? No. But we're doing it anyway. That's my Sarah. We rode the elevator up to the executive floor. Michelle was at her desk, her eyes widening when she saw me. Sarah. Your father asked me to tell you the meeting is in the main conference room. I know. Thanks, Michelle. The conference room was already full when we entered. My father at the head of the table, his face carefully neutral. Uncle James beside him looking like he'd aged 5 years over the weekend. Derek across from them, his jaw tight. Aunt Patricia, my cousin Monica, 3 board members I recognized, and the company's general counsel Marcus Webb. Jennifer and I took seats at the opposite end of the table from my father. I set up my laptop and connected to the display screen. Good morning, I said, my voice steady. Thank you all for attending on short notice. I'm Sarah Morrison, managing partner of Hartwell Strategic Capital. This is Jennifer Chin, my co-founder and chief investment officer. We've called this meeting to discuss Morrison & Associates' strategic direction and to formally disclose our ownership position in the company. Marcus Webb cleared his throat. Ms. Morrison, we've reviewed the documentation your firm sent over. The ownership claims are extensive. Before we proceed, I need to verify. Everything is verified, Jennifer said smoothly, pulling up the first slide. Hartwell Strategic Capital has provided complete documentation of all investment transactions dating back 3 years. Every share purchase was properly recorded and filed. Every holding company structure has been independently audited. And every legal requirement for disclosure has been met. The slide showed a complex ownership chart with Hartwell Strategic at the top and various holding companies branching down to ultimately connect to Morrison & Associates. In the corner, in clear numbers, 51% ownership. Uncle James leaned forward. You're telling us that Sarah's company owns the majority of Morrison & Associates? Not just Sarah's company, Jennifer corrected. Hartwell Strategic Capital is a properly registered investment firm with $2.3 billion in assets under management. We have institutional investors, pension funds, and high-net-worth individuals as clients. Our ownership of Morrison & Associates was structured as a standard private equity investment. There's nothing standard about secretly buying a family company, Derek said, his voice sharp. I looked at him directly. We didn't buy it secretly, Derek. Every share purchase was properly documented and filed with the SEC. The Morrison family received quarterly reports from the company showing the evolving ownership structure. If you didn't read those reports, that's not a secrecy problem. That's a diligence problem. But you never told us it was you, Aunt Patricia said. You hid behind corporate structures. We use standard investment vehicles, Jennifer interrupted. The same structures used by every major private equity firm in the country. There was no hiding. There was simply no reason to announce our identity unless and until we needed to exercise our shareholder rights. Which brings us to today, I said, advancing to the next slide. Morrison & Associates has approved a $60 million development project called Riverside. As majority shareholder, Hartwell Strategic has reviewed this project. We have serious concerns. The slide showed the Riverside project, Derek's architectural renderings, the site plan, the projected revenues. It looked impressive, glossy, professional. Derek straightened in his chair. The Riverside project has been thoroughly vetted by our development team. Your development team is optimistic, Jennifer said. Our independent analysts are not. She clicked to the next slide, showing market comparisons. Comparable properties in the same neighborhood have vacancy rates averaging 34%. Derek's projections assume 90% occupancy within 12 months of completion. The neighborhood is gentrifying, Derek argued. Property values are rising. At a rate of 3% annually, I said, showing the data. Your pricing assumes 8% annual appreciation. That's not a minor difference, Derek. That's fundamental market misunderstanding. My father spoke for the first time. Sarah, Derek has more experience in real estate development than your analysts. Does he have more experience than the 3 former commercial real estate executives on our advisory board? Jennifer asked. Or more experience than our chief market analyst who spent 20 years at CBRE? Or more experience than our construction consultant who's overseen $4 billion in development projects? The room went quiet. I clicked to the next slide. We're not saying the Riverside location is bad. We're saying the current project plan is financially unsound. The commercial space is overbuilt for the market. The residential units are overpriced. And the construction timeline assumes no delays in a market where average delays are running 6 months. So what are you suggesting? Uncle James asked. That we cancel the entire project? We're suggesting a complete redesign, Jennifer said. Scale back the commercial component by 40%. Reprice the residential units to match actual market comps. Extend the construction timeline by 8 months. And most importantly, reduce the capital commitment from $60 million to $38 million. That would completely change the project, Derek said, his voice rising. The whole vision. The vision doesn't matter if the math doesn't work, I said quietly. Derek, you've designed a beautiful building. But you've designed it for a market that doesn't exist at that price point. We can build something beautiful that also makes financial sense. But not the way it's currently structured. Derek stood abruptly. This is exactly why we didn't want you in that meeting last week. You don't understand vision. You don't understand what it takes to transform a neighborhood. You just see numbers and risk and reasons to say no. I see a $60 million mistake that could seriously damage this company, I said, holding his gaze. And as majority shareholder, I have a legal obligation to prevent that mistake. You're not the majority shareholder, Derek shot back. Your firm is. There's a difference. Is there? Jennifer pulled up another slide. Sarah personally owns 73% of Hartwell Strategic Capital, which means she personally controls the majority stake in Morrison & Associates. She is not just the managing partner making recommendations. She is the principal owner making decisions. The room went silent again. I watched my father's face as he processed this information, watched the realization sink in. His daughter didn't just work in finance. His daughter owned his company. 3 years, Dad said finally. For 3 years, you've owned majority control of Morrison & Associates and you said nothing. For 3 years I provided capital that let this company thrive, I corrected. I funded the Denver expansion that's now your most profitable market. I backed the Portland acquisition that doubled your commercial portfolio. I provided bridge financing during the 2022 crash when banks were refusing loans to real estate companies. Every success Morrison & Associates has celebrated in the past 3 years was made possible by capital I provided. I didn't say anything because I didn't need credit. I just needed the company to succeed. But why? Aunt Patricia asked, genuine confusion in her voice. Why invest so much in a company and stay anonymous? Because grandfather taught me that the best investors are invisible until they need to be visible, I said. Because I knew that if you knew I was funding the company, every decision would become about family dynamics instead of business fundamentals. And because I wanted Morrison & Associates to succeed on merit, not because people were trying to keep the boss's daughter happy. Marcus Webb, the general counsel, spoke up. From a legal perspective, everything Hartwell Strategic has done is proper and documented. As majority shareholder, they have the right to approve or reject major capital expenditures like the Riverside project. The question before this board is whether we accept their restructuring proposal or whether we contest it. Contest it how? Uncle James asked. You can't, Marcus said bluntly. They own 51%. They have voting control. If Hartwell Strategic says the Riverside project needs to be redesigned, then it needs to be redesigned. Derek slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. We're going to let Sarah's company dictate our business strategy. It's not her company dictating strategy, Jennifer said calmly. It's the majority shareholder exercising standard governance rights. This happens in every public and private company in America. The difference is that most majority shareholders don't have personal relationships with management. That's exactly the problem, Derek said. She's using business authority to settle personal grudges. We excluded her from one meeting so she pulls out the nuclear option? That's not governance. That's revenge. I stood, pulling up the final slide. Derek, if I wanted revenge, I would have waited until after you broke ground. I would have let you commit $60 million in lock-in construction contracts. I would have watched the project fail and then I would have removed you from the company. But I didn't do that. Instead, I'm intervening before money is wasted. I'm proposing a redesign that could actually succeed. And I'm trying to save Morrison & Associates from a costly mistake. If that's revenge, it's the kindest revenge in corporate history. Dad stood as well. Sarah, I need to understand something. When you started this firm 12 years ago, was this always the plan? To take over my company? No, Dad. 12 years ago I was just trying to survive in a brutal industry. I was building relationships, learning markets, making smart investments. Morrison & Associates wasn't even on my radar. So when did it get on your radar? When grandfather called me 6 months before he died and asked me to promise I would take care of the company. He knew the family was fracturing. He knew Uncle James and you couldn't agree on strategy. He knew Derek was talented but impulsive. He asked me to protect what he'd built, so I did. I invested. I provided capital. I stayed out of the way until I couldn't anymore. My father's face was unreadable. He asked you to take over. He asked me to protect. There's a difference. Uncle James stood. Robert, we need to discuss this privately. As family. I am family, I said quietly. You're also an investor who just hijacked our company. I'm an investor who owns the company. That's not a hijacking. That's how capitalism works. Jennifer began packing up her materials. Gentlemen, the proposal is on the table. Redesign the Riverside project according to our specifications, or cancel it entirely. Hartwell Strategic will vote against any motion to proceed with the current plan. You have 2 weeks to decide how you want to move forward. We walked toward the door, but my father's voice stopped me. Sarah, you said grandfather knew about all this. Do you have proof? I pulled a folded letter from my bag. Yellowed paper, my grandfather's distinctive handwriting. He wrote this the week before he died. I've kept it in my office safe. Dad took the letter, unfolding it carefully. I'd read it 100 times, but I still remembered every word. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. But I want you to know that I'm proud of what you're building with Hartwell Strategic. Your great-grandmother would be proud too. She was the real business genius in our family, though my father never gave her credit for it. I know you're planning to invest in Morrison & Associates. I know why you're structuring it the way you are. And I think it's brilliant. Let them underestimate you. Let them think you're just the granddaughter who likes numbers. The best position in any negotiation is the one your opponent doesn't know you're in. When the time comes, and it will come, don't apologize for being smart. Don't apologize for being prepared. Don't apologize for protecting what I built. Our family has always valued the loudest voice in the room. But sometimes the quietest voice is the one that actually understands the numbers. I'm leaving you the company, Sarah. Not in the will. Your father would never forgive me. But in every way that matters. Take care of it. Take care of them. And don't let anyone tell you that being underestimated is the same as being powerless. Love, grandfather. Dad read the letter twice, his hands shaking slightly. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. He knew. He actually knew. He understood what I was doing. And why. He left you the company. He left me the responsibility of protecting it. There's a difference. Uncle James took the letter from my father, reading it himself. His face went through several emotions. Shock, anger, resignation, something that might have been respect. We need time to process this, Uncle James said finally. This changes everything. Take your time, I said. But understand that the Riverside project doesn't proceed without redesign. That's not negotiable. Derek was still sitting, staring at the table. I worked on that project for 8 months. I know. And the core vision is good, Derek. The execution just needs refinement. Work with Jennifer's team. Listen to the market analysis. Build something that will actually succeed instead of something that looks impressive in renderings but fails in reality. You don't think I know what I'm doing. I think you're creative and ambitious, which are great traits. I also think you sometimes let vision override math, which is a dangerous trait. Learn to balance both and you'll be extraordinary. Jennifer and I left the conference room. In the elevator, she turned to me. How do you feel? Terrified. Relieved. Guilty. Vindicated. All of it at once. That sounds about right. She squeezed my shoulder. You did the right thing, Sarah. Sometimes being family means being honest, even when honesty hurts. My phone buzzed with a text from Michelle. That was the most intense meeting I've ever seen. Also, you're kind of my hero right now. I smiled despite everything. Over the next 2 weeks, the Morrison family went through stages of grief and acceptance. Uncle James tried to rally the family to contest the ownership structure, but Marcus Webb confirmed there was no legal basis for challenge. Derek submitted 3 revised proposals for Riverside, each one slightly closer to our specifications. Aunt Patricia called to tell me I'd broken my father's heart, then called back 3 hours later to apologize and admit she'd been wrong. And Dad was complicated. He showed up at my apartment on a Wednesday evening, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Can we talk? I let him in, poured 2 glasses of wine and sat across from him in my living room. I've been thinking about what your grandfather wrote, Dad said. About letting you be underestimated. About the loudest voice not always being the right voice. Dad. Let me finish. I underestimated you. For your entire life I underestimated you. I saw you succeeding in finance and I don't know what I thought. That it was nice. Respectable. But not serious. Not like what I did. You built a real estate empire. That is serious. I expanded an empire my father built. You created something from nothing. In 12 years, you built a $2.3 billion investment firm. Do you understand how extraordinary that is? I had good partners, smart advisors, and luck. Stop, Dad said firmly. Stop diminishing what you've done. I did that to you for years and I was wrong. You're not lucky. You're brilliant. And I was too proud to see it. The words I'd wanted to hear for so long, but they came with too much pain attached. Dad, I didn't do this to prove anything to you. I know. That's what makes it worse. You did it because you loved grandfather's company enough to protect it. Even when we shut you out. Even when we dismissed you. You still protected us. I protected the company. There's a difference. Is there? He smiled sadly. Sarah, the Riverside project. Derek presented your redesigned proposal to me yesterday. It's better. Substantially better. The market analysis actually makes sense. The pricing is realistic. The timeline is achievable. It's everything his original proposal should have been. Derek did the work. We just provided the framework. You taught him how to think critically instead of just thinking big. That's a gift. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Finally, Dad said, Morrison and Associates needs you. Not just as the majority shareholder. As part of the leadership team. Marcus suggested creating a Chief Strategic Investment Officer position. Someone who oversees major capital decisions and long-term planning. Someone who can balance Derek's creativity with financial reality. You want me to work for Morrison and Associates? I want you to help lead it. The way grandfather wanted. The way you've been doing anonymously for 3 years but now visible and acknowledged. What do you think? I thought about grandfather's letter. About great-grandmother who'd been a business genius without recognition. About being the quietest voice that understood the numbers. I think it's time to be loud, I said. Yes. Dad smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him in weeks. Your grandfather would be so proud. Oh, I'm proud. Even if I'm late to the party. Better late than never. 3 months later, I stood in front of the Morrison and Associates board as Chief Strategic Investment Officer, presenting the quarterly investment review. Dad sat at the head of the table. Uncle James was to his right. Derek was there, now leading the Riverside project redesign with genuine enthusiasm instead of defensive pride. And at the far end of the table, the seat I used to occupy when I was just taking notes, sat a new junior analyst. A recent business school graduate taking notes on her laptop, probably wondering if anyone actually read her memos. After the meeting, I stopped by her desk. Hey Amanda. How's the learning curve? She looked up, surprised. It's intense. Everyone here is so experienced. Sometimes I feel like I'm just trying to keep up. That feeling never goes away, I said. But eventually you realize that keeping up was never the point. Understanding is the point. Keep taking those notes. Keep asking questions even when people act like they're obvious. Keep building your foundation. You never know when you'll need it. She smiled. Thanks, Ms. Morrison. That actually helps. I walked back to my office, the one next to Dad's, with a view of the harbor where cargo ships came and went. On my desk was grandfather's letter, now framed, reminding me daily that being underestimated wasn't weakness. It was preparation. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. New opportunity. Tech startup Series C looking for $200 million. Interested. I typed back, send me the fundamentals. But Jen, make sure they know who they're dealing with upfront this time. Where's the fun in that? The fun is in building something that lasts. Surprise reveals are overrated. Says the woman who just spent 3 years as a secret majority shareholder. Exactly. I learned my lesson. Transparency is underrated. Through my office window, I could see the Morrison and Associates sign on the building across the street. Grandfather's legacy, now mine to protect. Not from the shadows anymore, but in full view. The quietest voice had finally learned to speak. And the family was finally learning to listen.